Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the EmeraldPlanet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. And we're looking around the globe in 143 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices that can be used to bring about a better life for the 7 billion souls that inhabit the planet. We're going to be talking about the 1 billion souls, plus or minus a few, on the continent of Africa, and the whole notion of the scourge of malaria and its impact that it has on the lives of the people there. It is estimated through the United Nations and through the World Health Organization that some 350 to 500 million people on the planet actually are infected with malaria, mostly in poor nations, and many of those in Africa. And so what can we do to address this issue? How can we stop the loss of over 1 million children, mostly, and some adults, every year that are lost to malaria? And we have someone with us that's going to be telling us about actually living in Africa and actually living in the whole notion of malaria and what goes on there. So Mary Virginia Thur is sitting with me. She is the Washington, D.C. manager for Project Muso. She's going to tell us about that. Also, she is a returning Peace Corps volunteer. And just like the Marines, Mary Virginia, understand, once a Peace Corps volunteer, always a Peace Corps volunteer. Well, welcome, and tell us a little bit about where you were in Africa, about Africa and this country called Mali.
Okay, well, Mali is a very large country right in the center of West Africa. It's half desert and the other half is kind of savanna. It's got many people in it. It's most well known for Timbuktu. A lot of people
and that's
didn't know
really
that.
A place that I'm looking forward to visiting one day.
Yeah, and it's got hundreds of different ethnic groups that live together. And many different languages. Technically, French is its official language, but...
and that's because you have so many different tribal areas and linguistic groups that you really have to have one unifying language. Mm-hmm. And French happens to be, that was the old colonial master of that country. Mm-hmm. And so they left that legacy, both of the French language and also the administration format and laws from France, correct?
Exactly.
Now, we're looking at a photograph right here, and tell us a little bit about what is the average Malian experience on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of lifestyle would they have there?
Okay, so the vast majority of Malians live in small rural agricultural communities. They work within the seasons. So there are 3 main seasons in Mali: a hot season, a cold season, and a rainy season.
Now understand, a hot season could be 120 degrees on the Fahrenheit scale.
Yep.
And the cool season, their winter, would be like 80 degrees
exactly.
on the Fahrenheit scale. That's still hot.
It's very hot there. But they work seasonally, so during rainy season is the planting season, and then after that is the harvesting season, and cold season is a lot of downtime. It's a good time for Peace Corps volunteers and other volunteers to get a lot of work done because they have a lot more free time at that time.
Now, when you say free time, this is really the families and the peoples within the communities where the Peace Corps volunteers are very busy during that time. Okay.
Exactly.
Good. Looking at this photograph here with the mud huts and then also this very large mud structure, which in the early days would have been forts and palaces and all this. Why do they have this style?
There's not a lot of trees in Mali, so they have developed this style of building bricks out of mud. And so the vast majority of buildings, especially in the rural areas, are made out of mud bricks and are maintained with mud. Sometimes they'll have tin roofs or use cement, but in general it's mud. And that's a picture of a mosque, which is the majority religion, the major religion in Mali. There's also Christianity and animism. but a lot of the life centers around Islam.
Well, and also the notion of Islam, the teaching of Islam, but also the ebb and flow, the daily flow of the daily prayers and all the various festivals that they have and religious holidays. It's a very busy calendar that they have.
Yes, it is. The month of Ramadan is a very big deal. They already wake up very early as farmers, you can imagine, and they eat before the sun comes up, and then they aren't allowed to eat and sometimes drink until the sun goes down again. And so you can imagine that during the summer months when it's very hot and they're out in the fields, they're very dedicated to that religion.
That's really in some ways a great hardship, even though it's part of the religion and the culture, and something that really by the dictates of their beliefs they need to do. But yet the physicality of all of that, and then also going all day without drinking water in those extreme heat, that really must have an impact on the mind and the body, and also how you can actually function to do your work during those times.
Well, it's meant to bring appreciation for the things that, in their case, Allah or God has given them. So they appreciate the daily basic needs, and at the end of the month, these people don't eat meat every day. Meat is something very special. Their animals are highly prized and valuable to them. So at the end of Ramadan, it's a huge party, and relatives and neighbors all get together and they eat and they celebrate together all day.
Well, it's I know from having traveled in Central, Southern, and Eastern Africa, the lifestyle, although it seems to be somewhat simple as far as the Western society is concerned, it's also very complex. Because you have all these various ethnic groups, the tribal groups, the communications and the relationships you have. Then you have between the imams, the religious leaders in the community, and the general population. And in many cases you have chiefs or elders that actually manage these different communities. How does everybody keep all that in balance? And how does that impact on the day-to-day ebb and flow of life?
It's actually a great point. Mali has been, one of the reasons it's not so well known is that it's a relatively peaceful country. And one of the ways that they are able to keep that peace is that, and many Peace Corps volunteers, I'd like to say almost all Peace Corps volunteers and Project Muso volunteers take on a Malian name in addition to helping them integrate. It also, their last name places them within an ethnic group, and it gives them a relationship with every single person in that country. You know that person, certain last names are brother and sister to each other, and certain last names are joking cousins to each other. And so you have a relationship with total strangers on buses and markets immediately. And so they're able to you develop trust and integrate, and the relationships keep going like this, and you can depend on people that share your last name that you've never met, and you can joke with people who have your joking cousin name. It's a wonderful system for keeping peace and for keeping trust and relationships going, especially
well, it's really all about
foreigner.
harmony. I mean, that's just an absolutely fantastic way. And when we're looking at it from the outside, we think of how simplistic, but yet it's very sophisticated. And also the complexity of all that is just like, the times I've lived in Japan and Korea and visited China places. You have similar kinds of relationships, so everybody knows where they are within the culture and the society, and everybody seems to fit.
Yes, and that's one of the beautiful things about Peace Corps and Project Muso is when you start, they're very welcoming people. So when you start taking on their customs and you take a Malian name and you eat with them, you fit in their grid, and they're much more likely to work with you and cooperate with you and just be very open to...
Well, you're part of the family.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a very open, extended family, and I found that through my travels in, some areas of Africa, but also in Asia as well, is that, once you get into that family structure, I mean, they really treat you like family.
Oh, yeah.
But also they expect you to obey the dictates within that family at the same time. So looking at Project Muso, what is Project Muso and what does that actually mean?
Project Muso, the full title is Project Muso La Damne, and the major... I would like to say the language that people used to trade with, because they have many languages at home, but the dominant local language is called Bambara, and in Bambara it means the project for the empowered woman, Muso meaning woman and La Damne meaning empowered. And
that's fantastic. Maybe we need to have that in North America. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I have to admit that I haven't been everywhere in the world, but I did spend quite a lot of time in West Africa traveling. And West African women, and I'd like to say specifically Malian women, are the hardest working women on the planet. They do everything the men do with a baby on their back earlier and later than all of them. So it's something that we like to tap into that resource as Project Muso and really work with them to improve the whole community.
Well, the whole thing about women and empowerment of women in these communities, depending on what statistic you read, whether it's UN or World Bank, IMF, fully maybe 75% of all the small businesses are either owned, managed, or somehow controlled by the females in these societies. So they really, in many cases, are the actual backbone of the local communities and the economies within the villages and the small towns and even the large cities.
They really are. They have usually in Malian culture, they have the major responsibility for feeding the family and caring for all the children, and a lot of the time the financial means are not there. And one of the programs Project Muso is developing ways that we can help meet their health needs and meet their financial needs, because that's such a central role that they play in their culture and in the community as a whole. Well,
looking at Mali and northern Africa, and of course it's on the West African side of all this, that's a very busy neighborhood that they live in. If you look at some of the names that are in the current news right now, that's a very busy place as far as the current events, and also the Arab Spring, as they're talking about, but the change of governments. But again, Mali has been very quiet. And looking at the complexity of this map here, these are the major provinces that you have. We have just about 1 minute left and about 45 seconds. What would you like to leave with our domestic and international audiences as far as Mali and its place and its impact in the world?
Mali's impact on the world, like I said, it's unfortunate that countries who do not have political unrest or something, violence, aren't getting the attention that the other countries have, but it has a wonderful, welcoming culture, incredible music, incredible artistic talent, and unfortunately it's in a position where it's also one of the poorest countries in the world and affected by all these illnesses. So I just like it to be recognized.
Well, I think what you're doing, and we're going to move into this African National Model Program that's going on within Mali itself. And I just think what you're doing is just absolutely fantastic. So thank you for being with us, and be back as we look around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 143 different nations looking for those best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that can be used to bring about a better life on the globe as we know it today and as we move through the 21st century. One of the topics that we need to really address as we look all across the equatorial world is the scourge of malaria. As we've said in an earlier sequence, over 350 to 500 million people are affected with the malaria. 1 million people die. And every time one person comes down with the malaria, many times that takes at least one, maybe three people out of the workforce until that malaria incidence passes. So what can we do? What can be done? And so we have four community health leaders that are in the civilian world and also in public health. They're sharing with us about how can we address malaria in these developing worlds. One of the projects through Rotary International is in the country of Mali, which is in West Africa. It's a very sophisticated, in many ways, a very forward-thinking nation, but yet quite traditional in other circumstances. At the same time, it's willing to be an African national model for addressing, to control, and even eradicate malaria. We have Nelly Pavisich, who is the Rotary International Future Visions, and we're going to talk about what Future Visions is all about. Global grant lead for the malaria prevention and treatment in Mali. So, Nelly, welcome back, because you've been with us before.
Thank you, Sam. Great to be here.
And it's just really a great pleasure working with you and the Rotary Club of Capitol Hill, because you've really dedicated yourselves, it's not just to Mali itself and not just to malaria prevention, but also it's really sharing these best practices around the globe. So you really need to be very proud of this.
Thank you. We are.
Now, looking at this emblem here, you're going to tell me some of the secrets of this Heart with Rotary. Tell us what this is all about and how that relates to Mali, malaria, and best practices around the globe.
Okay, reach from within to embrace humanity. That's our theme for this year, as for the whole entire Rotary world. And this means basically matching your talent with service. It's basically what we're doing here. We are using what we know better, our skills, and sharing it with humanity. And we do this with 30,000 clubs all over the globe and over 1 million Rotarians that are distributed here. We have Rotarians in Washington as well as in Mali to make a project happen.
Well, looking at the emblem, and also you're located in Washington, D.C., you're at the Capitol Hill. Rotary is 33,000 clubs. It's about 1.3 million volunteers. These are members around the globe. And it's just amazing how that you can go to a club in Mali, you can go to Tokyo, Japan, or Moscow in Russia, or downtown Washington, D.C., and when you're there, you still get the same sense of energy and dedication and just the harmony of working with people around the globe.
Yes, that's exactly what makes great things happen, because of this powerful network, we are able to connect in such a way that if we raise money in this country and then the other country raise some other money, and we connect and communicate with each other, we can make great things happen. For example, this particular project has Rotarians in Mali. We started with them. Has Rotarians from Canada to also Eastern in the United States, and we also have people from Hong Kong that have pitched in. And altogether, 25 clubs have helped this project from the very beginning for the last 3 years.
Well, looking at 25 clubs, you've already mentioned 4 continents that are being involved in this. What is the networking outreach of Rotary, and how can it actually leverage all that power, that energy, the resources that Rotary would have through these 33,000 clubs to focus on a project such as in Mali?
Well, there's 2 or 3 components to it. One of them is the Rotary Foundation matching grant system. It has been around for many, many years, but that allows Rotarians with less money in developing countries to basically partner with richer countries that are able to raise more money, and then the Rotary Foundation matches it. The other component is the fact that you build these friendships across the globe and make it's all about trust. I mean, you identify projects that are worthwhile, and you have Rotarians on the ground, even if you have never been there, like I haven't been in Mali, and you can make it work that way. It's basically a network of connections, and with the internet, with social media, that even becomes even easier and nicer.
Well, I'm going to go between these 2 slides that we have here. I just think it's phenomenal because here you have people that obviously are working together as far as Rotarians, and they're reaching out to people they never met, may never meet, but yet they still feel the spirit of kindred nature, the fact that they're doing good in the developing world, but also there's much benefit. It really comes back to many of these giving nations in ways that they never expect from people that may be socially, economically, more at risk, but yet they have so much to give at the same time.
That's right, and we learn from each other a lot because, it helps that we have a foundation that's very well organized. Everybody follows the same rules, and we have people that are experts on some topics that help us build good projects. So that what makes it work, really.
Well, looking at these ladies in Mali, and of course this is the focus as far as malaria and all that. Why did you choose Mali, this particular township in Mali? And what do you think is, as a model program, what are some of the outcomes that you hope to achieve from this?
Well, we picked Yirimadjo is the place where we're working because we knew people working there, and we knew about their job. We knew that they were doing good job, Project Muso particularly. We also learned about it through Rotarians that connected us with the right club to do the right to do the work. And we thought that it was important, although malaria is all over Africa and many other places in the world, that it would be good to focus in one community and make the difference there. The way we do it, the way basically Project Muso does it, is treat the whole problem with malaria prevention. That's where the Bestnet come to help. Then we have malaria diagnosis, and if you can diagnose malaria within the first 48 hours, you can actually save the life of a child. If you do it later, it will not work. So they have a really good program with community health workers that take care of that part. And the third component is treatment of malaria. So if we only would provide one of them, it would not work. So that way, maybe next year, we'll be able to see whether we made a difference in this community and how many lives were saved.
Well, I think it's fantastic looking at it, and this photograph kind of gives you the idea of just how intertwined and all these 4 continents and the 25 clubs are actually working together to make this successful program. But looking at it, we had the Polio Plus, which was 27, 28 years that's been going on, eliminating polio from the face of the earth. Water is really the next big project, but malaria is also being focused on as far as Rotary and also World Health Organization, United Nations, World Bank, because there's so many people that are affected by malaria. So looking at what are some of the best practices that we can learn from a Polio Plus that now is being applied to this project in Mali in eradicating and controlling malaria here that may be then used out to other villages around Africa and across the globe.
Sam, in my opinion, it's all about the partnerships. Polio eradication is thanks to not only Rotarians but also the World Health Organization that provides the best practices, and we align to them. The alliances with the government authorities doing the ministries of health in all the countries affected by the diseases, either polio or malaria, same practice. And also the fact that you have the locals, people there knowing what they have to do, and we, the foreigners, basically not interfering with the ways they do work. and helping them. And the role of Rotarians, basically, they act like a civil society organization of volunteers who have nothing at stake but look at the benefit of the project. So that makes it work, and I think that's the best part, is the partnerships around it.
Well, looking at these 25 clubs, 4 continents, and focusing on having those local partners within Mali itself, the active Rotary clubs, is really critical to all this. So how do you go in and identify the clubs that either can or should be worked with, and then what is their give back into the system? Because many of the funds and the in-kind, like the mosquito nets and all that, are being provided from outside. What is the give back from those local clubs, and how is that critical to making this type of project successful?
Well, in this case, in this last year, Rotary has an initiative called Future Vision, and there's 100 districts out of many, I think there's 3,000 of them, that have been selected already. So we have the advantage of a criteria set up by Rotary International. Then in terms of the country, in West Africa, the district has 14 countries, and we picked Mali because of the connection we already had. We have the people there. In terms of what the club, the benefit that the clubs, both sides would say give to the project, basically is expertise and knowing the place and knowing how to deal with the particular regulations of this
It's really
country.
critical then to have those local components, because,
Definitely.
and of course, many of the government officials may be members of the Rotary Club within their own local community, and many of the leaders within these towns and the cities, for sure, actually be members of the Rotary Club. So, but also at the same time, they really understand their own communities, the culture, the tribal relationships and communication patterns. So that's really critical to make something like this successful. And these can become in themselves best practices that can be used in other countries and other continents around the globe.
Definitely, and believe me, without those components on the local side, it's very difficult to do any I would say, international aid. I would think everybody will agree that we need that. Sometimes you feel like doing some good work from this country to another country, and without a partner, you will not be able to succeed. Definitely.
Well, we're going to end up this segment with the malaria around the globe. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here. What is the color code of this, and how does that impact as far as what Rotary International, but all the other multinational corporations and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are doing?
Well, this is a map that shows malaria in the world. You can see the yellow parts are the most affected, and the green are the less affected. And basically, it's not something that only a specific club or a specific project can take care of. There's global partnerships, and we will have a guest coming up in this later that will tell us the major global initiatives that are being rolled out to eradicate malaria. We believe that when the vaccine is found, maybe we'll be doing a different work, but there's a lot of work to be done in the world.
Well, I think it's really with the leadership that you're doing as far as the Future Visions project here in Washington, D.C., that it's really critical. Nelly and all the other Rotarians are involved in this, and we just applaud you for your hard work. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Only you.
Don't play with matches, don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rigged out life, nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire!
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals and the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go! Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People! The flood is imminent! Is it too much to ask?
for a little precipitation!
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 143 different nations looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that can be used. One of those very simple things, and I say very simple, is mosquito netting. Now, in the United States, unless you actually travel abroad in certain parts in Africa, South America, Asia, you don't really know anything about that and what it means to actually protect yourself throughout the night when you really need to be protected from mosquitoes that are actually looking for the number one commodity they just love is blood. And but also with extracting that blood from their human host and others, the fact is that they can infect you with malaria, and over 1 million people, I'm going to say that again, 1 million people die every year from malaria or the effects of malaria. And when you have some 350 to 500 million people that are affected with it, that impacts on the day-to-day life, the workflow, the education, it really has a tremendous impact in these very poor and marginally poor countries along the belt of the equator. And so we have someone here actually that's experienced with us, Sophie Turrelll, who is actually the Project Muso volunteer, lived in Mali and became entwined with the village and the people there, and distributed, I'm looking at this number, 21,900 insecticide-treated bed nets.
That's right.
That's a big job.
It is a big job. And so what we did to distribute those nets was we worked with the community management committees in our community.
Now tell us about community management committees. Tell us about that, how they're organized, because, you know, we kind of take the broad brush of, you know, malaria, Mali as a nation, all over the globe. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, how we actually take these bed nets and impact in people's lives.
Sure.
What's the committee?
So part of Project Muso's program is to organize the community members to organize themselves, in effect. So these are just community members volunteering their own time to organize community actions, and they get very involved in various community actions. And this particular one was distributing all of those bed nets to achieve universal coverage of bed nets, one bed net for every bed in the entire community. So there were a number of different distribution sites where volunteers from the community management committees would sign up to help and distribute the nets and check identities of the people who are coming to pick them up. And
to make sure they're from within the communities they're saying that they're from.
To make sure they're going to the exact right bed that they should be in. And it worked very well. We distributed all the nets over the course of a few weeks, and now everyone has their nets, and they also have education about how to use them. So the community management committees partnered with our community health workers, who are local mothers that go around and they know their community members, and they know which community members live where and which community members have these children and which community members have been ill or aren't ill. So they know their communities really well, and they were the ones to tell each person who came to pick up a net how to use them, how to take care of them.
And also, too, the whole thing is that those that actually may have malaria, because my understanding is that if someone is infected and they catch it within 48 hours, that actually the treatments are quite simple, and we can save lives. So it's very critical that we have these community management teams, and in essence, they're checking on them day to day, really, aren't they, to make sure that they protect her health, and if they need remediation or medical treatment, they can get it in essence, instantly.
Exactly. So that's exactly what our community health workers do. They know exactly who's ill when they do active case finding, which means they go door to door and find people who are sick, and they accompany them to the health clinic. There's one health clinic for 56,000 people in Yirimadjo.
That was the number I saw. That is absolutely incredible. And also, what is this balance as far as the number of nurses and healthcare workers and physicians among the population vis-a-vis, say, the United States, Canada, or more advanced countries?
This is a great question. The healthcare infrastructure is very weak in Mali. There's about 0.2 doctors and 3 nurses for every 10,000 people. Now,
0.2 doctors. Now, that means less than 1 doctor.
Less than 1 for every 10,000 people. Now, in the U.S., there are 27 doctors and 98 nurses for the same number of people.
So the disparity between what you're doing within a country such as Mali and what you have in the United States or maybe Canada is even a little higher than here is just, it's a vast gulf that we have. And if we don't have these community leaders and also the volunteers within the community, but yet at the same time, Sophie, we hear about in many countries there's no volunteerism. People don't really get that active. They leave everything to the government, but it sounds like what you found in Mali is the opposite of that people really are very involved in their community.
They're very involved, and so it makes our job somewhat easier because we come in and we try to help the community, and they really are interested in helping themselves, and so they take our efforts and they amplify them. And what we found is that these efforts with the bed nets and also trying to put in efforts to treat and diagnose malaria cases, we've increased the number of children treated for malaria within 48 hours from 14% to 45%, and that's a tripling of the
That's an incredible number. But looking at this photograph here, I had that up just a few minutes earlier, and I've gone back to this. We see these ladies sitting around, and obviously they're sharing with each other and educate. What would actually, just give me a summary of what are they hearing, and how does that directly relate to their local community, but also each family member within these local communities, and that they can actually take back and share with the people that they're responsible for.
So the community health workers, first of all, when they give a mosquito bed net to a mother or to a family, they'll explain exactly how to use it, and they'll say you have to take care of it by washing it this frequently, or you have to keep it out of the sun. This is how you drape it over your bed so no mosquitoes get in. So number one, they're protecting the community members from getting malaria during the nighttime when they're sleeping. And then they also educate them on many other health topics, including hygiene, hand washing, how to keep a clean house so that the children have a safe and healthy place to grow up in. They educate them on how malaria is spread, so they know what the disease is. They know that mosquitoes breed in clear water, so they remove puddles from their houses so that mosquitoes can't breed near their children. And they really impart a lot of different health messages. And they tell them how to take care of diarrhea cases. They really tell them how to do many different simple health tasks that are lifesavers.
And what you're talking about there, Sophie, is that these are just very simple techniques that have been evolved over the last couple of hundred years. Actually, in Western society, we're now sharing back into areas that actually maybe a couple hundred years ago were actually doing many of these things. And so it's almost like rediscovery of many of these techniques and the best practices we're talking about in the EmeraldPlanet. So you have this young child here. She has obviously 2 bed nets. Now, what is she going to be hearing when she gets home and the mother and the community of the social worker is educating her about what to do with this bed net and how it's going to protect her life and those of her friends?
Well, she'll be told that she should always sleep under a net every night. She should never sleep anywhere that doesn't have a bed net. And she'll be told that her parents should sleep under a bed net, so she'll remind them as well.
So it's like the children and the adults are sharing back and forth, and it's the old 4-H concept that you're educating the children, and actually you're reaching the adults through that effort.
Exactly, and the most important thing about what the community health workers and the community management committees do is education. And so they educate the adults, they educate the children, and it trickles up and it trickles down, and it ends up educating the whole community.
Now, looking at this young child we have here, in a typical household, how many generations would you have in that household, and what is the interaction, and how do they actually assist and serve and honor each other?
Mm-hmm. You could have anywhere from 3 to 4 generations in a household, so grandmother, adults, children, children of the children, and they all interact together and live together, and they have very tight-knit communities. So if a message is understood by one member, it'll spread to all the other members, and they really are together throughout the day and throughout their lives.
Well, I know in these 21,900 insecticide-embedded bed nets that it's really important that you have universal coverage. One, since you've been there and done this, what does universal coverage truly mean? And secondly, what is the long-term impact on the health, the education, and the economy of these communities, and how does this all intertwine by this universal coverage?
That's a great question. So universal coverage essentially means one mosquito bed net for every bed where people are sleeping. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean one net per person, because sometimes 2 young children will sleep in the same bed, and you just have a double-sized mosquito net covering both of them.
So mosquito net per bed.
Mosquito net per bed. And so that means that every person, when they are sleeping, is protected from being bitten by a mosquito that may carry malaria. In terms of the economic impacts, health costs are the major driver of lost productivity, lost wages for people who are really living on the edge. They're living on $1 a day, and they cannot afford to either be sick themselves and therefore have to pay astronomical costs for medicine, and miss work and miss those wages.
And many times we're going back to this one clinic for this entire city of 56,000 people, is that there really are no medicines there. You have to go out, buy the medicines at the instructions of the physician, and then take those medicines to the physician who then administers. So it's not like you just show up and they say, okay, we'll give you these shots or this formula, whatever it is. You have to go find it and then take it to have it administered.
And the medical system can sometimes be very confusing for community members. So our community health workers help with that by accompanying patients to the health center, teaching them how to use the medicines as the doctor prescribes, checking up on them afterwards to make sure that they have taken the medicines according to instructions. And also sometimes they will do malaria rapid testing and bring malaria medicine into the household instead of making the household member have to travel to get the medicines. The community health worker can bring some of those. So they're really an extension of the primary health care system.
Well, looking at this community here, this is the interaction of the entire community, and this is not a question that you and I talked about before, so I'm going to... What do you think would be the impact of someone like yourself as a volunteer going in this community and helping long term? What is the real, both the social and the financial impact?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first of all, it's always great to build relationships between different countries. I think both members learn in the process. And then second of all, American volunteers bring certain skills that are very difficult to learn in Mali, computer skills, how to implement programs, how to do fundraising, and we also bring medical knowledge and knowledge of medical systems. So they benefit from that, and we benefit from them as well.
And also learning about their culture and their history and their society, because that's something that's really very necessary as we look around the globe, and we're trying to help but also learn at the same time. Thank you for being with us as we work together for the Emerald Planet.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing. No.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello again, as we bring you the Emerald Planet from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking at many nations, 143 to be exact, across the globe, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that can be used to not just maintain an adequate lifestyle across the planet, but also to increase the comfort, the welfare, the health, and education of every citizen on this planet. Many people say that we just need to maintain where we are and maybe even decline as we go through the 21st century. But I think you'll find from the experts that we have on every week in the Emerald Planet that they are not sharing that idea, but they believe that we actually need to enhance, expand, and to bring about an ever-increasing lifestyle for all the citizens. And this scourge of malaria we're being addressed to determine how we can actually to reverse 1 million lost lives every year, some 350 to 500 million people that are ill. And so what can we do about that? It's something that's preventable, it's reversible, but we need to do something about it. And so we have Doreen Weatherby, who is the North American manager for what's called Bestnet. And welcome, Doreen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to put in here that we met through Star Tides, and our good mutual colleague, Dr. Lynn Wells, he'll get a kick out of that we actually say good things about him, and he's not even here in the studio, but he has been. But it was a pleasure meeting you through that introduction. Tell us about Bestnet. What is it, and actually, where is it located as far as its headquarters?
Okay. Bestnet is located in Denmark. We're a Danish company. However, we have state-of-the-art facilities and personnel located on over four continents, and we're expanding constantly. We are a manufacturer of bed nets, but a particular type of bed nets. Our bed nets are long-lasting insecticide-incorporated nets, and that's
I'm going to bring
mouthful.
I'm going to bring this photograph up here because it's a little bit about your technology. But one of the things I wanted to put in about Bestnet, and you can share this back at headquarters, that we are now interacting with a number of Danish firms. And what we find is that they actually not only just have good quality, they do a lot of research and development. They spend a great amount of time within the communities or the countries that they're focused on. But there seems to be this very real balance between, we want to make a corporate profit, but humanitarian outreach and humanitarian dedication. Tell us a little bit about that philosophy and the Danes, because I think this is something in future programs that we really want to investigate this more. And we see this with Sweden, we see it with Norway and Finland and places. There is a special mentality in these countries. What is it?
Well, the Danes are consistently voted as the happiest people in the world. They believe in a good balance between work between family life and, yes, being involved in humanitarian efforts.
And it's a delicate balance, but yet it's not something that they just tout all the time, but actually they just go out and do it.
They live it. And actually, if you go to Denmark and you visit, you will see very often a heart symbol incorporated into, it's on every single coin. It's on their dollars. They firmly believe in a big heart and in sharing. And I have been delighted to work with Bestnet. It's a very passionate group, and we have an excellent product, and makes it easy.
I like this here. It says everyone has the right to a decent life. Show that you care. Now, this really says a whole lot. Again, this is a company. It wants to make a profit. It's reaching out to the globe to expand its market share. But at the same time, if you look at what they're doing, it really is protecting the lives not just of thousands, but millions of people in Africa and Latin America and Asia. That's a mighty task, if you will.
It is, and our guiding principle for the company is that everyone has the right to a decent life, and we are very, very much involved in producing products that are the best products that can be available at the lowest price.
This is very important, because I know that in reaching out we're saying you're a business, but actually you're working with the United Nations, you're working with the World Health Organization, the World Bank. I mean, really your target audience, if you will, is mostly these large multinational NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are doing humanitarian work. So how did your organization select and focus on these types of organizations?
Well, bednets have been around for a long time, and the traditional bednet, as it's known, as it first started, was just netting that was hung over a bed. About 25 years ago, the community stepped up and realized that if you treated a bednet with insecticide, that you could actually get better control of malaria. And that would be, really second generation of bed nets. The next step that came along, because those bed nets would have to be re-dipped every 6 months, the next generation of bed nets that came along are those that are treated, they last a little bit longer, they last 2 to 3 years. The idea that you could produce a longer lasting bed net that can provide the many benefits for up to 5 years was actually adapted from other technologies that previously exist with insecticides being incorporated into plastics. Our nets are made out of polyethylene, and it's an incorporation process whereby the insecticide is incorporated into the very core of the fiber, and it is
so that's why you get this slow release, and that's why you have this 5-year life on that, which is quite unusual to have an insecticide or an applique that's actually being slow released, and actually it repels but also can kill the mosquitoes.
Yes, it is unusual. Many of the nets that are currently being used only last 2 to 3 years. Using the incorporation method with the insecticide, we are able to get the 5-year lifespan from the nets.
And we're going to talk about the green aspects of all this, because as soon as you hear about insecticides, everybody goes, oh, insecticide. But the whole thing is that people don't realize that any medicine that you're taking, the combination of compounds and formula, all that, there's nothing that you have that doesn't have some kind of side effect, and we just need to know that up front. But if you can protect, millions of people from actually getting ill, then that's just and the evolving nature as far as the bed nets are concerned. We see these 4 different styles. Tell us about these styles, how that they're used, and what is the difference between these 4 styles?
Well, what you have is, because malaria occurs, we saw a little bit earlier, the malaria belt around the world, and you have different cultures, you different styles of housing, and you have different vectors of mosquitoes. The first 2 nets that you see are the rectangular and the conical shape. Those are probably the two most common that people are familiar with for the universal coverage campaign. And a lot of it has to do with the attachment points. The conical net can be hung from one single point. The rectangular net needs to be hung from multiple points. The pyramidal net is used in some countries also. And actually probably the most unique that you see up there is the hammock net. And this is actually used in Southeast Asia and in Central and South America, where you have cultures where you have actually daytime biters that are transmitting malaria. And
because my understanding is that most of the mosquitoes, at least in Africa, travel at night, and so they do the greatest part of their damage at nighttime. But this whole notion of even the conical style that we see here, this is something, and I've been in situations where we actually had lunch, under the bed net, as we're sitting there having lunch, because again, there are mosquitoes out during the daytime. The families listen very well to the public health professionals, and they said, we're not going to just have this thing at night, we're going to have it all day long. And so anytime they were in the house, they were using nets.
Right, and you have to remember that bed nets can be used against to prevent other diseases, not just malaria. You have dengue, and you also have leishmaniasis, which is carried by sandflies. This next slide that you just brought up is actually a very unique product that we have, and it's called Net Protect A. And this product is designed for non-permanent sleeping spaces. In many homes around the world.
So this actually could be in a living room, it could be in the kitchen, it could be any other area where you just want to protect. And again, this is where you have a great number of the mosquitoes that are day biters, as we call it, versus just at night.
Well, even more than that, in many homes in sub-Saharan Africa and in other malarious areas, we are talking about areas that suffer from extreme poverty. And in many instances, the one living space that they have serves for other activities during the day and then serves for a sleeping space at night. This is a unique design in that it's meant to be hung once, and then during the day you simply shift it aside in the room, and that it just goes across the room, similar to the way that you would push a curtain aside.
Oh, it's just absolutely amazing the kinds of products that you're developing and being used. And again, this goes back to this being responsive to the needs of the clients, the various cultures, and as we know, even village to village or town to town, it could be quite different.
Absolutely.
How they do things and how they like to perceive the world. This is something that I found very interesting. I like all these bright colors, and having traveled now in 77 different countries and being in many of the more non-affluent households, I can attest that in many places there's very few things there that are a real color that liven up the inside of the house. And when I saw these Bestnets, this was just really incredible because you just actually bring a profusion of color, but also a new energy into the structures themselves.
Yes, well, there actually have been some studies that have just been published. There's one in particular from Ghana that proves that when you provide bed nets that are colorful, you increase the usage rate. And so we're very, very pleased that we are able to supply nets that can come in any color of stripe.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing, and thank you for being here. And please pass on to your management, the Bestnet Europe, that we think they're doing a great job. And thank you for being with us, our dear guests from here and abroad, as we create the Emerald Planet.